Hi, welcome to the Jefferson City Show. I'm your mayor, Eric Struemph. Today's our very first show. We have our special guest with us today. As we move on with the Jefferson City Show, we'll be looking at different formats and different topics, obviously coming up within our community. I think right now you'd have to almost be living under a rock not to know something about transformation that you've seen in the paper, or maybe right here on JCTV. My guests today are Jefferson City Area Chamber of Commerce, Janet Wear-Enloe, who's our chairwoman this year, and Randy Allen, who's the chamber president. To bring you up to date, on November 7th, the Jefferson City Council unanimously voted to place the transformation sales tax on the February 7th ballot in 2012. Randy, Janet, welcome today.
Hi, thanks for having us.
We'd like to get really kind of a behind the scenes point of view really with you guys as far as tell us how transformation actually started.
Well, the first thing, I guess, the Chamber Board of Directors invited a consultant to come in and sort of give us his perspective on what we could do to move the community forward. And he was just a guest speaker at a retreat. And he did such a great job that the board decided to hire him to do a study for us. At the same time, we did focus groups with the community to ask our own citizens, what do you think the community should be like in the next 5 years? And we had over 500 people participate in those focus groups. So it really started about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago minimum, with the focus groups.
Tell me how the focus groups, how were you able to decide what the topic of those focus groups might be?
Well,
Is that something that John Roberts brought to the table as he was here, or?
Some of the statistics that were presented, actually Randy led a lot of those. If you want to give some of those facts first, we kind of set the stage with some of the information that we had learned and then opened it up to the public. And you might share with them what some of that is.
Well, one of the things that John did, he was focusing on 3 areas: increasing talent in your community, the innovation that your community wants to tend to generate, and then the quality of place issue, which we've all heard about. And so he brought selected groups together on those 3 topics, and that's kind of where the focus group efforts kind of came from. And then, as Janet talked about, we actually worked on opportunities, a predetermined list of opportunities that came through those focus groups.
And Randy, if I remember right, when I was still councilman before I became mayor, I think a real big thing that we found out along with the county and the chamber was that the amount of younger people we were losing. Can you touch on that just a little bit? Yeah,
and it came up in several different places. I think it was kind of our shock treatment to actually start moving us forward, because we found out that our younger demographic, our 18 to 40-year-old population, was shrinking substantially, and not just over a period of time, but within the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then we thought, well, maybe that's a national trend, or maybe that's a state trend. Well, what we found is that ours was worse than both of those, right, which they were trends. Obviously, the younger demographic is shrinking in size, but we found we were shrinking much more than the rest of the country and the rest of the state.
And in comparison, I know a lot of people compare us to Columbia, the big city to the north. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they didn't have that problem, I'm assuming.
No, they probably have the reverse problem. They have many more young people in their community.
As the transformation process, I know one thing that we did back when I was on the city council, Randy, you kind of led this charge, both of you, taking a busload of business leaders and community leaders to another state capital. Can you kind of go into that process and how that worked?
Janet, you want to add to that?
Sure. We visited Topeka, Kansas, and they had just gone through a visioning process a couple of years prior to our visit. And so they were starting to show us the things that were already happening in their community after this process had taken place. And you could see they were having some growth. Some areas that had been dilapidated were being revitalized. And we saw really some things that inspired us, and that is a lot of what made us say, gosh, we need to ask our own community citizens, what do they want to see in Jefferson City? And so after presenting some of this information and kind of explaining to people, because quality of place was a new term for us, mm-hmm. or quality of life, of course, we're familiar with. That's what we think of about the community where we live. Quality of place is what other people think of when they think of your community. And we found that our community has a lot of great resources, but we're not utilizing them to their full capacity. A perfect example is the Missouri State Prison. You know, once they started doing tours in 2009, it's grown substantially, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And so this is just one example that came up from these focus groups where people were saying, we've got to do something about this.
So really, basically looking back then, your focus groups met. Obviously, a lot of people were energized at that particular level. And then from there, Randy, I know it had a lot of snow the night that you kicked off transformation. What was the date of that roughly?
It was in late January of this year, 2011.
Okay. And obviously you had a huge turnout that night at the Miller Performing Arts Center. And I know afterwards, how many of your task force did you end up with after that night?
Well, what we decided to do is we implemented what we called phase one, which was do some of the things we already know from the plan, from the focus groups, that we could begin to work on without a lot of resource. And then we put into place, Janet had the idea of putting it into place, a phase two, which was working some of these ideas a little further. We weren't really ready to kind of put them out or lay them on the table yet. And so we did phase two, which was working with 8 different action teams working on these issues. Now there was a 9th action team, but it was related to more structural issues than the others. But the 8 action teams worked up until August, working these issues out. And what was interesting is they were able to study some at a higher level, and some they came up with that weren't on the original list because of the synergy of working on all these things.
Yeah, the energy within the task force themselves.
That's right.
Obviously, I'm assuming you want to talk about some of those today, but I know that one thing that you said that came out early on was the festival districts.
Yeah.
I mean, that was something that out of transformation, it was brought forth through the council and the council process that, hey, we really want something else different to do. And the Thursday Night Lives this summer started off in June and July and came back in September. And what a great treat. I mean, as a mayor of your hometown, to be able to walk down the street and people say, this is kind of like the Jeff City Parish picnic. I mean, they were conservative. We didn't have any trouble with crime. They ended early enough in the night. So great job there on getting that done. Let's talk about, I know obviously you had several different areas, but let's talk a little bit about MSP. As I look at the list and the projects that you have within the transformation, economic development, sales tax, MSP is a huge part of that. Tell me more about that.
Right. Well, for anyone who has done a tour there, they know what a great resource it is. The tours that are given by the Convention and Visitors Bureau or coordinated through them are fantastic, and they have a huge number of people from outside the state who come here to visit those. But what you see is how the buildings are literally falling apart. They need the windows, they need roofs, they need the buildings sealed so that they won't continue to deteriorate. And so that's something that when this action team studied it, they got actual cost estimates to have those things taken care of so that they can be here for the long haul. Because we know if nothing is done to protect those buildings, in a few years there won't be much to see on a tour because they literally will be falling in.
What year roughly did the prisoners move out of MSP?
August of 2004.
Okay, so since 2004, what really has been done to help protect those buildings?
Virtually nothing.
Okay, and obviously a lot of that is due to the state. The state, obviously, just like any form of government or business right now, funds are tight, and I'm sure they've done what they can over there. But that's really the resounding thing I hear as mayor is what will you do to save MSP? Well, I think your number one thing on here when it talks about those exterior renovations and whatnot, that goes a long ways towards that. Randy, I know also on here it talks about the Chestnut Extension and MSP Parkway. Could you explain that, please?
Sure. One of the thoughts of that action team was how do we get this property in the hands of developers? Well, as any developer knows, when you build a subdivision, you have to build the streets before you can sell the lots. And so in this case, the group studied the master plan to make sure that was the most appropriate thing, and in fact concluded that it was, and said the most important infrastructure was building the connection between the end of Lafayette Street, that's there now, and Chestnut, and then extend Chestnut to that roundabout. That would open up a substantial number of lots, parcels of property in the MSP to be developed.
Okay. As we look into the future, what could be some of the attractions, some of the things, Randy, that maybe could be developed in that area for people that have never looked at that in any other way except for, you know, the old MSP penitentiary? What is your vision? I know that you were on a mayor's or the governor's task force years ago. Just give us real quickly just some of the things that you could see being there in the next 10, 15 years.
Well, obviously the state has committed to that site for any of its future office buildings. The health lab is there now. The DNR quote-unquote green building is there now. And I think the state, if it builds office buildings in the future, that will be the home for it. In addition to the historic district, which is a tourist attraction, and hopefully in the future DNR will take that over as a historic site, which would just be awesome. The other ideas, obviously, we looked at a potential, the city conference center being at that location, which was originally part of the master plan 10 years ago.
Good. But and that's something I want to get more to here right before we take a break. But I mean, just a ton of potential there.
Right.
Roughly how many acres?
Well, the whole site that was abandoned by the Department of Corrections is 140 acres.
Okay.
About 60 of that was in green space, which is up beside Riverside Park, which the master plan calls for that to remain green space.
Okay.
And about 40 acres inside the actual walls themselves.
Okay. Great. Coming up next after our break, we'll talk more about Jefferson City's proposed conference center, along with St. Mary's and what could happen at the old St. Mary's as far as Lincoln University and their School of Nursing. And there's so much more to come up. You're watching the Jefferson City Show. I'm Mayor Eric Struemph.
Explore new worlds. Read. Visit literacy.gov and let the journey begin.
Folks, why won't we go to the doctor? My uncle called, speech all slurred, complaining his arms numb. He called everyone. He even called my daughter Tiara, because, you know, she's got a year of nursing. Everyone thinks he needs to go to the doctor, including me. So he said, well, will you take me? I'm like, I'm on the road. He goes, I'll wait. Stroke's no joke. If you or someone you love have symptoms of stroke, don't wait. It may be too late. Dial 911. Time loss is brain loss.
Hi, welcome back to the Jefferson City Show. I'm Mayor Eric Struemph. Our guests today are Randy Allen and Janet Wear-Enloe with Jefferson City's Area Chamber of Commerce. And today, a word that we're talking about, which is out and about all through Jefferson City, has been for the last couple of years, and that's transformation. Randy, right before the break, you were telling us more about what could fit at MSP, and you had mentioned a possible conference center. I know when I was on the city council, when I first became mayor, obviously the voters passed a lodging tax to help fund a conference center. And through your task force, there's been some, I hate to use the word rumblings, but there's been some synergy about MSP. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, I think one of the things that came out of this is that action team heard from the community and from the action team itself that why not MSP? Why just look at the McCarty Street site? Why not just look at MSP as well? Maybe there's a lot of things going on that could add to that critical mass that we talked about. And so the action team used the Architects Alliance, Kerry Gamfer and his team, to study both locations in terms of would the new conference center size fit on both of those locations. And so that was presented to the council, I guess, less than a month ago.
Right.
And what it concluded is that they were both good sites for the conference center, but it's all to marketing. I mean, it's who.
Right, and as you'll remember, at that very same meeting,
Right.
I instructed staff to go ahead and start, kind of the design and marketing phase, really for both sites.
Right.
Because I think, really, as a business person and as a mayor, until we find out which one is the best business model for our city, we don't really know which one will be the best. But I could see the pros and cons of both. And as I said on TV not too long after that meeting, we're very blessed to have two sites. One right next to the Capitol, one right there next to the gym that MSP is. Could there eventually be other building around? I mean, I know at East McCarty, it's obviously a little bit landlocked with what it has. With MSP, I thought someone had told me that you might gain like possibly some extra retail space around that area. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. As a part of the master plan and as a part of the configuration that would be opened up once the infrastructure is in there, there is an area that has been labeled the entertainment area, and that's ideas for that would be, nightclubs, restaurants, and retail shopping. So that's right in the master plan. That's probably one of the things that the commission would move to try to get RFPs on, somebody to do that.
Okay, now when you say the commission, there's a Missouri State Commission. Could you maybe explain just a little bit of that for the people at home?
Well, that goes back to when the original legislation was passed in the late 1990s, which created the MSP Commission, and that commission was delegated with the responsibility of overseeing the redevelopment of the MSP property. Three state committee people, 3 city committee people, 3 county committee people, and then a chairman that the governor selects. So it's a 10-person commission that oversees that redevelopment.
Randy, I know one thing in here, you have 2 things. You have facility enhancement towards a conference center.
Correct.
At either site, but also exhibit hall funding. Right. I know when I was a councilman and there towards the end, we said, okay, we have to have exhibit space. Can you tell us more what the task force said about that?
Well, they've said loud and clear that if you don't build a conference center with exhibition space, you might as well not waste your money.
Right.
Which was a loud and clear message. And so the action team took that to heart and said, that we need an additional $5 million to provide that space.
Well, something that's interesting with all of the action teams, a big part of the work that they did over 6 months was research. They did focus groups, surveys, personal interviews, that sort of thing with key stakeholders. And one of the big groups, obviously, for a conference center are conference planners. And so they surveyed conference planners as well as meeting with them in focus groups and individually. And that's where this information became loud and clear, because you can build a great place, but if the people who actually plan the meetings doesn't believe in it, they won't bring it.
Yeah,
and so to get their input,
customer base has to come here. Right. And
so
actually, I was lucky enough to sit in on some of those. Randy had invited me to those, and just a lot of the ins and outs and logistics and all that kind of stuff, and kind of what they like to look and see and everything that we'd have to do around here. And for years, people have been going to other places. So I think bringing them here would be fun. And one goal I have, I don't know if this is public yet, but I guess it will be now, is the Capital City Corvette Classic. I'm a Corvette buff, and I've been on Steve Picker to try to get us a really big national type Corvette show. So hopefully someday we could do that.
That's Seat of the Power of 4, Capital City Corvette Classic.
There you go.
Cool.
So, okay, guys, another thing, obviously, which is huge, here with just in the last month, the 179 reopened after the underpass was put in. The new St. Mary's is obviously coming to town. We're very thankful as a community for the Sisters of St. Mary's and their great corporation for reinvesting in our community. What that leaves us with over time is what happens to the current St. Mary's, sitting right in the heart of the city, right on the hill. Obviously, your action teams took a look at that, so tell us more about that.
Right. Well, as you mentioned, it's right there off Highway 50, 63, and 54. You can see it from all directions. And so we want to make sure that it is not blighted, because it does say something about our community if you see something like that. And the oldest part of the facility is over 100 years old. And so I think a lot of people want to see something really fantastic happen there. So the action team for St. Mary's redevelopment started looking at a variety of things that could possibly go in there. It's a huge amount of square footage. They have great parking structures. Then another action team was Lincoln University, looking at a variety of things, programs that Lincoln would like to see expand. And so those two action teams really began to dovetail because, as you mentioned, the Lincoln University School of Nursing is very well known, it's excellent, and they have a waiting list. So for them to get to expand would be fantastic for our medical community and also for young people. So that's something we would love to see happen, and this facility at St. Mary's would allow that, where we've already got the operating rooms, intensive care, those towers where this really specifically designed floor plan already exists would be perfect for the School of Nursing. And there were a handful of other projects that Lincoln would like to see expand or newly created. And so Carrie Gamfer from Architects Alliance looked at the facility, looked at how you could break it up in the most logical format and take these programs and place them there. And it's just so impressive when you see that and see the potential of what could happen with that facility.
I know that obviously the School of Nursing, I mean, we don't. There'll always be kind of a shortage of nurses. I did talk to Dr. Mahoney here a couple months ago, and I asked her. I said, is there anything that could happen with your funding at the state level that could affect some of these projects? And she didn't think so, because so much of the stuff that Lincoln's doing right now, especially there, is I mean, nurses are needed everywhere, all over the world. So. What a neat thing there. Can you tell us more about the research and some of the health things that they're doing there too?
We're looking at an innovation center, and that kind of concept is where you would have space that people who want to start businesses or have other small businesses that they want to grow, whether they're doing research or actually producing some kind of a product, could come in, rent space, and develop their business further. And so to do that, kind of growing your own local businesses is a really smart thing to do.
Kind of an incubator? Is that really kind of what the...
There are slight differences, but along those lines.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a great thing, again.
So basically, to the people at home that may not be familiar with this, if I have an idea for a business, I don't necessarily have the capital or the space or the money for rent, I might be able to go there and kind of get started, see how it works, all the above, before I kind of go out completely on my own and that kind of deal. And there's obviously, I'm assuming, people there that kind of help you through all those stages.
Right. There were a few of us from the action teams that actually visited an innovation center in Kansas City area in Independence. And one of the things we saw there is some of the small businesses that were doing so well. They were doing just what you said. They didn't have a lot of capital. They could pay rent for the hours that they needed it, but they didn't want to have a space for the hours that they didn't need it. Sometimes they have another job, and so this is something that they're starting and growing on their own. And they found some really success already happening with their areas. And the nice thing about it too is if someone in your own area has a great idea and they can develop their business here, then it's stimulating our own economy.
Sure, and it keeps people here.
And it's a great thing to do for people who have these good ideas.
And Janet, you know this, obviously, you've told me this before in your profession at JCMG, being a recruiter. Can you tell me roughly, what does one doctor coming to town, what does that generate?
Well, estimates are that about $1.5 million per physician who's brought in stimulates the economy.
Wow.
Through hiring staff, through purchasing homes, sales of other sorts of things that they purchase, patient care, whether it's nursing homes, hospitals, a lot of spin-off. So it's a huge thing to recruit people to our community, and that's something we want to do not only with physicians, obviously with me working for JCMG, but in every area of the community. We really need to see what we can do to get people to want to live in Jefferson City, and that's what the transformation is all about, is getting people, young professionals, people who have creative and great ideas, to want to be a part of our community.
There's a lot of things on this list yet, but I know a couple of big ones are parking. I remember, I'm 44, I guess now, give or take, and I remember as a kid, Dad would drive around the block of High Street waiting for Mom to come out of, was it Penny's?
Well, I'm sure.
Downtown, okay. Because there was just, on a Wednesday night, there was just no parking. There was no parking. And, here we are, 30-some years later, and it's still the same issue. So what you have there is obviously some great ideas. I know there's a lot to do with Capitol Avenue and that district and the streetscapes, which are obviously a very neat thing. Randy, as we kind of wrap up today, Randy and Janet, can you help explain how did our city get to this point, do you think?
In the transformation, or where we are?
I mean overall. Obviously we're the state capital. I was trying to explain this to someone the other day, and being the state capital comes with a lot of great perks, obviously. But however, our state jobs have been dwindling at a pretty good rate since the 2000s. So I'm assuming that a lot of these people that may have stayed here before are not now because the state is not hiring, the state's doing the layoffs and that kind of thing. Is that how you see it?
Sure, absolutely. State government was a growth industry in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and beginning in the early 2000s, it's not a growth industry. It's good, solid industry. But anywhere, I think we started out at the high of about 18,000 state employees in Cole County, and we're down to about 15,000 now. 15,000 is still a lot of people, but it's not a growing thing. And
but we know, and I've made trips to the Capitol. They've told myself and leaders like you that over time those jobs are going to continue to decline. So one thing that I think that you've done a great job here with transformation is, one, you got the community involved, and you've got a lot of energy behind this. Without this being a tax, how else could you see these projects getting done, Randy?
No, this is one of the things that we told the committees is that if you come up with these ideas, we will try to find a way to make this happen. And we looked and looked and looked, and the only way to make this happen was through this economic development sales tax vehicle. We think it's an investment. I know everybody uses the T word, the tax word, but this is an investment for a specific kind of a thing. And one of the things that, just a quick example, John Roberts said, leveraging public resources to create private investment. And that, if you look all through this, that's what this is about.
What, someone had told me the other day that it's really kind of Jefferson City trying to pull themselves up with their own bootstraps. And well, good luck to you guys. Obviously, you brought it towards the city council. Randy, could you tell the viewers at home who your chairmen are for this campaign?
Sure. Janet picked Phil Freeman and Ken Hussey as the campaign chairs, and there's a small group, we say it's small, 24 people that's helping them with the campaign details. I say it's small because we had 600 people involved in this thing. So, but yeah, we'll be working hard on the campaign. We're raising money in the community, private money, to help fund the campaign, and hopefully on February 7th we'll have this.
Where should people look if they have more questions about these lists? Do you have a website on your at the chamber, or how do they learn more about transformation if they want to learn more?
Yeah, we're going to have a separate campaign website that's currently being worked on. So we'll let people know through the social media outlets and through the newspaper and through the TV networks.
We can make sure that the fine folks here at JCTV get that plugged into this broadcast. Well, this has been the first edition of the Jefferson City Show. I'm your Mayor, Eric Struemph. I want to thank everyone behind the scenes here, and of course everyone here at JCTV and Lincoln University for having us on your airways. If there's something or a topic that you'd like to know more about, please contact me at estruemph@jeffcitybo.org. I'm Eric Struemph. Have a great day.